And so I invite you to please bow your heads with me. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we are reminded always that all that we have, that all that we are, comes from you. I pray that we would sense your presence here in this room this morning, that we would be reminded that you and your Holy Spirit are with us always, leading and guiding us step of the way, supporting us and upholding us, and that you are at work even in the challenging and the frustrating times. I pray that we would be able in this meeting today to see those places where you are at work in our midst, to celebrate them, to give thanks for them, and to look ahead at what we hope to do and be and achieve in the year forthcoming. Be with all of us today. Work in our hearts, work in our minds, and work in our spirits, leading us and guiding us to be ever more in your will, walking in your ways. For it's in your name that we pray. Amen. All right, so I want to begin today by talking a little bit about church budgets in general. Okay, church budgets in general. This is not because you don't know what a budget is, might I add, okay? I know everyone in this room knows what a budget is. We all, I would imagine, have a budget that we use in our own personal lives. But budgets tell stories. They tell stories. They tell stories about our priorities. They tell stories about our hopes. They just tell stories about who we are and what's going on in our lives. Now, this past summer, I took a class. I've been doing my doctorate of ministry and preaching. I've kind of talked to y'all a little bit about that. And each summer, I get to take 2 classes. One of them has had to be on preaching, but the other one could be on whatever I want. And this past summer, I took a class on church governance and administration, taught by a guy named Stephen Tomlinson, who is a brilliant, brilliant guy, Stanford-educated economist. He taught at the McCombs School of Business at UT Austin. I believe he actually even helped develop their distance MBA program, although this is recorded, and I'm just as a disclaimer saying I'm not sure about that, okay? But he's a brilliant, brilliant guy. He now teaches at Seminary of the Southwest, where Tanner and Caroline both go, and Tanner's actually taking a class from him now. Sorry, he's a student of his now. I joked to Stephen this summer that I had to travel 1,200 miles away to Sewanee, Tennessee, to take a class from a guy who teaches 20 minutes from my house. But it was a wonderful class, and it really broke open for me a lot of different ways of viewing the parts of our common life, like governance, like our budget, like all of those things that we tend to think of as practical matters, which really aren't, they are practical, but they are also deeply, deeply theological. That it's not like on one hand we have the spiritual part of the church, and then on the other, we have the worldly part of the church, as if those two things are not inseparably intertwined. Okay? And he illustrates this by talking and telling a story about his grandmother. And he says that his grandmother used to love to play canasta, and she was known for this. And if we ever have Stephen here to speak, I'll tell you, he will tell this story, and y'all need to pretend like you've never heard it. Okay? But his grandmother loved playing canasta, and she was known for this, and everybody in the neighborhood would come to her house to play canasta. Now, people started getting way too into the canasta, and they started keeping score and getting mad at each other about it. And so she just stopped. She stopped the canasta. And the reason was, well, she did bring it back. I will say it was a happy end of the story. But the reason she stopped it is because it was never about canasta. It was about the community that the canasta fostered. That was what it was about. It was not winning or losing the game. It was about coming together in deep community with one another. And so Stephen's way of looking at church budgets is to say that basically everything that we do, the light bill, the whole thing, it's all canasta, which is another way of saying it's all about two things, and two things primarily: communion with one another and communion with God. That's what everything that we do is all about. And so, and how we do that is very, very important, and that's the story that our budget tells. Now, I know this week, many of you, probably all of you, I don't really know, received 2 emails from me announcing 2 staff changes. That Mother Kelly's last Sunday was coming up soon, and Liza Moore, our Director of Communications, at her last Sunday with us would also be coming up soon. And I know that for many of you, this was really surprising news. Very surprising. I will tell you in many ways, it was surprising to me in that we reached a point where I had to make those decisions to announce that. But I want to talk about that today because I think that's really important, and I want to explain why we had to make those decisions and how that impacts our 2024 budget, which I'll then hand over to David to talk about. Now, looking around this room, I see a number of faces, many of whom have been here a while, but some of whom are new to our membership over the last few years. You're new to the story of St. Richard's. You found us maybe during the pandemic, and you have made your spiritual home here, and I hope that you have found that kind of deep community, right, the canasta, here at St. Richard's. The part of our story is actually the story of this building that we're sitting in right now. That back at about 2014, 2015, 2016, some plans were hatched that we needed a gathering place. We needed a place that could be the parish's living room, the parish's kitchen, the place where community was fostered. Because before this building was here, for those of you who are new, there wasn't like another parish hall. It wasn't like we replaced a parish hall with this structure. There was the narthex, and that was about it. And you can ask some of these longtime members, I see some knowing nods, about like trying to do Lenten programming gathered in the narthex with a daisy chain of crockpots that was probably a massive electrical fire hazard, and trying to make it all work, right? And so there was a dream that we could have this big gathering space where we could be together and celebrate life together, and that it would be an outreach to our community, not just for us, but for those around us. Part of why we didn't have chairs set up today is because there was a quinceañera in here just last night that we hosted for not a parishioner, just a person in the community who was looking for a space, and we wanted to be hospitable. And there are many times throughout the year when we use this space for that. This space has enabled so much, not just the growth of our community, but also the growth of our school. Our school is fully accredited in no small part because we built this building. That was actually a requirement of accreditation would be that the school would have a facility like this one. And so this building has made so many things possible. But it has also come with some challenges. When I first got here, our mortgage payments for a year, and David will go through these in greater depth in a minute, so you don't have to take notes necessarily. The total cost of the project was about $4 million, and of that we took out $3.2 million in loans. Now, when I first got here, our mortgage payments on this facility were about $235,000 a year. Okay, that's a lot of money, especially for a church that our annual operating revenues somewhere right around like 6 or something. David will talk about that too. That was very frightening to me coming in the midst of COVID and seeing that mortgage payment was going to be coming due every month, right? Now, we've done a very heroic job in actually paying down a lot of that debt, and David will talk about that as well, okay? So that's a good part of this story. We've paid off over 60% of the loan, which is amazing. And that was a huge, huge help to us because last year we were able to re-amortize the loan to reduce our payments from $235,000 a year to $125,000 a year, okay, which is a huge savings and opened up some room for us. But it's still a lot of money. And part of what we found this year is that we were not able to meet the goals that we had for revenue to pay the mortgage. And so we were having to dip into operating expenses to do that. And we were having to do that at a rate that was just simply not sustainable. We were going through cash at the rate of about $10,000 a month. And we just don't have like an endowment. We don't have these sorts of really large funds. We're financially healthy, but we don't have that to pull from. And so over the course of the year, it became apparent to me, to the finance team, to the vestry, that we may have to make some really, really challenging really, really challenging decisions that no one would want to make in a context that no one would want to make them in order to put ourselves on a sustainable path to continue the work and the ministry that we're all about. And so I want to be very clear with you and very upfront with y'all about that is what has happened. This is not a performance-related thing. This is not that relationships were soured. I love both Liza and Kelly deeply. Kelly has been an amazing colleague, and I am going to really, really feel her absence, as I know that you will. These were not easy decisions. But I want y'all to know why we made them. And I also want you to know that the timing of them was so that we could be as generous as possible with them in supporting them after these decisions were made. One of the things that I just personally, and you're also, as always, I always say this, you are welcome to disagree with the decisions I make. Okay? You can call and tell me that you don't think that was the right way to go. That's okay. That's okay. But I do want you to know that I made them very prayerfully, and I hope very faithfully. And what I couldn't stand would be to keep waiting and waiting and waiting to make a decision that we knew we would have to make and get to a point where we could not be as generous as we needed to be in honoring them and their ministry with us. And so that's why the timing, the timing of those decisions were what it was. I also did not want us to put together a 2024 budget, which we're about to present to you. Yes, Lord? I did not want us to put together a 2024 budget that we knew was not going to be accurate. That also did not feel good to me either. Okay? And so, I'm happy again to talk more about, to talk about some of these things with you all, but I wanted y'all to know, truthfully and clearly and from the heart, that this has been a really, really rough week, as I know that it has been for many of you who've received this news, and for whom, especially Kelly's pastoral relationships, were very, very dear. Now, I'm going to talk about this at the 10:30 service in the announcements. If you were at the 8 o'clock, you've already heard this. But I know that the circumstances are not ideal. But I am committed, and I told Mother Kelly that I am committed to honoring and celebrating and giving thanks for her ministry in the ways that she deserves. And we are going to celebrate her big time next Sunday. Okay? And so I'm going to keep extending this invitation to y'all to come back at each of our services next week. We will honor her, and then we will have a parish brunch next week, at which we will we're gonna do it big, okay? Because Mother Kelly deserves for us to do it big. And I do believe that we need to honor and thank her for the role that she has played in our community. Now, there's been some concerns that have been raised about some of this, like what will happen with children's ministry. That's a question I've gotten, a very honest, justifiable question. I want y'all to know children's ministry is not going anywhere. We're going to keep doing that. That's still a priority, not least of which because I have a child, right? And I want my daughter to be able to grow up with a robust children's formation program. So I don't want y'all to worry about that. I mean, the shape that'll take, we may have to talk about in the months ahead, but it's going to continue. We're putting plans in place for all of that. I will also say that despite what feels this week like a lot of challenges, there is a lot of life and vitality and good that is going on in our community, and I want to hold up that both of those things can be true. It can both be true that we are feeling financial pressure from our mortgage payment and our debt service, and it can also be true that God is at work mightily in our midst, and that actually we have mounted a really strong financial and other ministerial recovery post-COVID. Part of this, too, is that I think until this year we've not really known how far we fell in 2020. And I'm happy that we're a church that's on the ascendant and not stagnating or continuing to decline, because that could be us, but it's not, thank God. So the overall outlook is bright, but we really had to get in a sustainable place, or else we would find ourselves in acute crisis. And so I hope today we can hold all of these things kind of in tension as we look at this budget, to celebrate what is going well and to be real and honest about the challenges that we have moving forward. So I could say more about that, but I'm really at the end of my time on the agenda for this part. I want us to be able to talk about the financials and to have time for discussion. So again, if you would like to talk more about this in whatever capacity, even if it is to simply to be upset, that's okay. I'm happy to be upset with you because I'm upset. We can all be upset. We tell Cece all the time that it's okay to be sad. This is what we have to tell her, because we're learning how to be a person, right, at the age of 2 in a couple of months. And so we tell Cece that it's okay to be sad. And it is okay to be sad. All right? It is okay to be sad. And so feel free to reach out to me. Now I'm going to hand it over to David to talk about the budget. And then we'll come back together to sort of do some discussion and Q&A. If at any point you have a question about something that we talk about, please do try to hold it to the end, because neither David nor I are very good at staying on track. So please hold your questions and we will get to them. All right, David.
Thanks, Cameron. Good morning, everybody. And I have to say that, I've been the treasurer at St. Richard's, for starting in 2013, and then I took a little 2-year break while I was in grad school and back at it again, and have seen a lot of challenges and, opportunities, and a lot of, thank goodness it's been far more good than it has been bad. But I remember the 2013 when I first became treasurer, and I was kind of diving into the numbers and bank accounts and all that good stuff, and I realized that we didn't have enough money to make payroll that week. And so that kind of started the track of where we developed our first 5-year plan and put a lot of stuff into place that was later going to help us out through tough times, where we put in financial policies, investment policies, how we do our business, how we pay for things, how we get reimbursed, all these different things. If you have a job and you have to go through expenses and all this stuff, you know what I'm talking about. We developed all that stuff. And the one thing that we did start doing was we started saving money for a rainy day. And, it took us about 2 years to finally kind of get all this stuff, all the foundation of all this stuff put together. And then we put together a 5-year plan that included, the major part of it was putting this place, building this place and doing it in a way that we could make it work and, not hurt us. Because, right about that time that we did it, we had just finished the financial crisis, and, there were all these 5-year loans that had balloon payments and all these different things. And so as part of our plan, we went and talked to the bank and said, we've got, roughly $800,000 of cash to help pay for this. What's it look like to help pay for the rest of it? And they really worked with us, to give us a good deal. Now, they offered us a 5-year loan because our goal was to pay it off in 5 years. But in the interest of kind of risk management, I went ahead and took out a 20-year note that would have minimum payments as opposed to having accelerated payments over 5 years and big potential balloon payment at the end. And that's one of many things that we did. We also have the Episcopal Church has a foundation called the Crump Foundation that also offers $500,000 block loans to churches at 2%. I wish my house mortgage was that. So we took that $500,000 and we applied it to the $2.7 million to pay it down. And then we also started our 5-year plan of paying off the debt and accelerating it. And so our 5-year plan contemplated having this parish hall paid off in 2023 in December. We were supposed to have a big party to celebrate it, burn the mortgage, whatever we were going to do. And things happened between that and between our plan and what happened here. COVID probably being the biggest one. We've also had inflation hit. St. Richard's in particular, from October of 2018 to September of 2020, we didn't have a rector in the midst of having to deal with COVID and rising inflation, all these different things. And so the good news is that we put a lot of stuff into place that was risk, in case, to manage all these risks just in case. And so those things have all played out, but as we kind of have gone through, this is our 3rd year, almost 4th year of inflation, that has not been seen in 40 years. For example, there's also just, a lot of people might have job insecurity right now. And so we've reached the point where we had to start making decisions because, number one, the capital campaign ends, and that's how we were servicing our debt. And we never ever really reached the target of, we had to have $1.7 million over that 5 years to pay the debt off. And we right now have, and I'll talk a little bit about this in the beginning, but that's kind of where we are. It's just that, the capital campaign has never realized the full potential that we hoped it would. And then also we just have had to dip into, use operating funds to help service the debt. And that's kind of where we've landed today. Now, the good news is, like Cameron said, that we are financially healthy. We still have a $90,000 reserve fund. We also have, good cash flow coming in, and we are a very well managed church. That when you guys see that we manage our expenses very well. We're also blessed with a lot of volunteers that take $1 and make it into $50 and $100. And so we are on stable footing, but we had to kind of think about things and make decisions based on what's going to happen down the road. And that's where we are today. So I want to talk a little bit about how we are doing this year, and then we'll get into a little bit more. Just move to the next slide, please. There we go. Okay. One of the things I wanted to point out is that up here in this little graph right here, I wanted to show you guys that, prior to COVID happening, we were on this growth track. The church was growing in numbers, revenue was growing, and this is all the time that we implemented our 5-year plan, and, we started construction of the parish hall, and, and then 2019, which, 2018 and 2019 was kind of like a banner year. That we've never had pledging be that high in the history of St. Richard's. We've never had that kind of revenue come in. And then in 2019, we lost a little momentum with losing Stewart. And then 2020, the wheels fell off with COVID and all the other things that happened. But what's happened is that starting in 2021, we started kind of coming back a little bit. And so now here in 2023, at the end of 2022 and into 2023, we kind of bounced back to where we were 2018, 2019. And so we're kind of, back to where we were. And so what we did is you kind of see that, when we forecast our revenue, we do it on a historical basis. We do a lot of statistical stuff I won't bore you with, but it usually is pretty accurate within a couple of percent. But this year, things have happened that just, we haven't recognized the revenue that we thought we would. And this doesn't include, this graph up here doesn't include the capital campaign. And so you see, like for 2023, we had $687,000, but we're only going to realize about $636 by the end of the year when we forecast it out. And so we're a little lower than where we thought we would be. We're still actually above 2022, but everything has gotten more expensive, as everybody knows. You can't go to the grocery. I used to be able to go to the store and spend $60. Now I'm spending $100 to $120, and everything has just gotten more expensive. And so it's just, so our revenue has not kept up with inflation. It has not kept up with the fact that our capital campaign is ending. And so I'm not going to dive into all the numbers right here. We actually have a handout. And also if you guys, if anybody really likes to dig into finance, you can always come see me and I can give you stuff to put you to sleep if you want. But, we are just not quite really where we expected we would be. And despite the fact that, we were on this, showing this growth, and then things have not been that way. So when we look at for the year, like how we're doing, on the right-hand side here, we are about, our budget is kind of flat, and we're actually about $60,000 in the hole, and that actually represents the difference of what we haven't received in the capital campaign to pay for the debt. And over here is where we're going to be looking at the end of the year, and this, we're looking at about $65,000 for the entire year, and that's where we're going to be looking. So we really manage our expense, like I said, just to kind of hammer that home, is that we really, really manage our expenses really, really well. I annoy people with the fact of what paperwork I make them provide and do all those things. And, we have a lot of checks and balances to make sure that things are spent on the way they're supposed to be spent. So really the big thing that we have is revenue and where that comes from going forward. And wanted to talk, this is where we get to the 2024 budget. And when I put in, we've spent the last couple of years like talking and imagining about like how do we manage through COVID, but how do we also talk about things after COVID and as we start getting things put together. And I put together this kind of what would a real budget for St. Richard's look like, and it's not up here, but it actually approaches close to $1 million if we had all the staff we had all the things we wanted to do and do all these different things. And that's because that's the size church we are, that's the kind of things that we do, and we're about 65 to 70% of that. So in this budget, when we first put it together, I had a heart attack because I put everything into it. We decided to keep the budget flat for 2023, with the exception of we did have to adjust some things because utilities are going to be more expensive. We had to adjust some other things, and so I put the budget together, and we had a deficit of $200,000, and that's kind of what started this whole thing of looking at things and like how are we going to be sustainable in the future and looking at those. And so that's where we made the adjustments. And really, this comes down to, as Cameron said, is that just we're losing our capital campaign revenue source to pay the debt. we've done lots of things to make it like we went and talked to the bank and we re-amortized our loan, where basically what that means is that originally, we were paying $16,000 a month, but because in year 5, when our rate was adjusted, we only owed about $1.2 million. I asked them if they would recalculate our payments based on the new balance, and that cut our payment in half. The bank also is, our bank is very generous. First Texas Bank, they are very involved in the community. We've been banking with them for about 50 years, and our rate adjustment is basically just whatever they pay. So we went from a 4% loan to a 4.5%. And right now, if you've looked at buying a house, you're paying 7 to 8. So it's pretty favorable, and even commercial loan rates, which we have a commercial loan, is even higher than that at this moment. So we're doing really well. And then, as far as like doing everything that we can to manage this, but what we're looking at is, we're forecasting revenue of $653,000, and that's losing about $100,000 a year in the capital campaign. And we're going to have total expenses of $719,000, and that leaves us a deficit of $57,000. Now, some other things that we're doing is we have talked to the diocese. We've been talking to them over the last couple of months about this, and they are actually working on helping us with some resources to kind of help us manage this deficit. That, having some funds available, if we do have a shortfall, then we'll have that available. The other thing that we do have available too is we do have our $90,000 in reserve fund, and we also have, which this is actually kind of like the last ditch line of credit, last line of defense, is we have a line of credit with our bank too that's got a 4% interest rate. So we've had that line of credit for like 9 years, and we've never touched it. And I don't anticipate us having to touch it, but it's there if we need it. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the budget. And, just to kind of let you guys know is that, pledging is probably the biggest source of our revenue. That's the green line right there that you can kind of see. And I apologize, it's a little dim, but, next is what we have, which is pledging, which is non-pledge recurred giving. And basically that's people who don't fill out a pledge card, but they give every single month. That they either give online or put a check or whatever. And then we have some smaller amounts over there, which is Sunday services, which is, you put money into the plate and we collect that. And then we also have the preschool cost sharing, which basically we pay for all, we share this space. And so we share all these buildings. And so basically what we do is we charge them a little bit each month to recoup our costs for utilities, internet, all, paper supplies, whatever they're using. And then the parish hall rental is one I want to talk a little bit about. Is that's actually one thing that's been kind of a bright spot, even though it's not a big amount. When we first built this parish hall and we were thinking about how we were going to be using it, and imagining, a space for us to use, a space for people to come in and pay to have weddings or businesses to pay. But we also had this opportunity to use it as a space where we could help people that maybe didn't have resources to pay. So make it a space available for people that didn't have resources. And really for this thing to become sustainable and for us to be able to do all those different things is we have to get to about $45,000 to $50,000 of rental revenue every year. Now, in COVID, we had a couple of $1,000s because we had some things kind of toward the end of 2020, but we've watched it go from near zero to we're probably going to end the year with about $20,000 in revenue. So over the last 2 years, we've actually kind of doubled what we've gotten in that. And because this is a really beautiful space and a lot of people are using it. And I think that we actually have deposits for some events that are going to be happening through the end of the year. So I think that we're going to be to $20,000 to $25,000. So I think the next year or two, we're going to start seeing where we get to that 50,000, where this place basically pays for itself. So that's one little bright spot that I saw. So that's where we are. And, when we look at our budget, you kind of see up there that we've got our expense categories, and mission and ministry is basically the biggest thing of what we do, right? That's, we program, Sunday school, worship on Sundays, outreach, all those different things we do. Administration is that, underlayer of doing things that pays for, copy machine, paper, internet, those different kinds of things. You guys can see the parish hall debt is actually now part of our budget now. And, it's just like your household budget, your mortgages. You live in your house as part of your life. It's the same thing for us. This place, we live in it, we use it, and it's part of our budget. Property, building, utilities, that's where one area that we do have a little bit of concern because through COVID, we have, we cut way back on doing things. And, our facilities are, our buildings, with the exception of this, are, going on 25 years old. Everybody remembers that we had to replace the HVAC in the narthex. So that's another large cash expense that we had last year. Thankfully, we were able to raise enough money to pay for about half of it, but we still had to pay for the other half out of our funds. And so we have a lot of stuff around here that we are doing our very best to keep running, but ACs do tend to fail. We have some ACs that are 20 years old, and I think that Jeff has about 50 pieces of bubble gum bolted together. I don't know. But he does walk around with a lot of duct tape and baling wire. But I'm just picking on Jeff. Jeff is one of those guys that takes $1 and makes it into 100 that I was talking about. Does just a fantastic job. Outreach is basically, the stuff that we do out in the community, that we share with people. We do things. That does not include what we do with the pumpkin patch. That's actually a separate fund altogether. So this is just directly from St. Richard's. And then other expenses are things that really don't have a home, like little one-time expenses. And then also how we set aside money every month, for rainy day funds. So we still try to set aside a little bit every single month. It's more of kind of an accounting function, really just us saying that we have this money that we've been setting aside. The last couple of years, we've set aside far less because we've had these COVID issues and different things, but we are trying to get intentional again about saving some money along the way, just at least even a little bit. So that's really, I wanted to talk a little bit more as with the budget, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Parish Hall because that's really the big thing about why we are where we are right now. That's just some notes on the budget. Okay. This is just a little background. Just a reminder, or if you weren't here at St. Richard's when we did build the Parish Hall, the final construction cost was $3.4 million. We paid about $700,000 of it with cash. That was actually basically paying for design. We paid for the kitchen equipment with that and different things. And so we financed $2.7 million. And the goal was we started that loan in 2017 and we were going to have it paid off at the end of 2017. We're going to have it paid off in 2023. With the second capital campaign. And then like I said, we got the $500,000 loan and we paid the balance down with that. So that's kind of like the history of this thing. And then we've done lots of different stuff in this Parish Hall, had lots of fun in it, have had lots of events and different things. And I'm really happy that we did it. So this is kind of where we stand with it, is that out of the $3.2 million that we originally had started with, we're down to $1.3 million. And that's actually one thing I think we can really celebrate is that despite everything that we've gone through, not having a rector, COVID, inflation, keep going on to things, is that we've paid off a little over 60% of this loan through 5 years, despite all the challenges, not realizing the potential of the capital campaign we hope to do. So that's one thing I think we can be very proud of, is that despite everything, we still managed to we didn't reach our full goal, but we got pretty far along the way. And so that's where we looked at that. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about where we are and why we have the thing that we had. Is that when we were running the numbers and doing analysis, we figured that over the 5 years, the capital campaign that was going to run to pay off the debt was going to be $1.8 million. And so that was, the goal that we had. And you can see that, this is the capital campaign that we did way back that kind of helped pay for construction, pay for some different things. And then this is the capital campaign that ends in December of this year. And this one had a far bigger response than this one did. And, there's lots of reasons why it didn't work. And, I think one thing is that the messaging on that capital campaign was not that great. And that's on the part of the leadership. And there was mixed messaging about what that capital campaign was for. And then also, we just had a lot of transition through that happening too. And so this is kind of how the capital campaign and how the cash flow has gone for the Parish Hall for construction and for the paying off the debt through the year. And so we've never really quite gotten where we needed to be. And right now we've collected 75% of what we're supposed to collect through the 56 months. We have 3 months, almost 4 months left now. In December. So hopefully we do always see in the end of the year, a lot of people will catch things up. So revenue kind of doesn't matter if it's pledge or whatever. October, November, and December always tends to go up as people are catching up because summertime, everybody's traveling and things get forgotten. So it gets caught up. But that's where we are with this. On one hand, we've not gotten to 100% of our goal, but I think we've gotten pretty far. And the one positive thing I'll say is that, all the planning we did, all the thinking through things that we've done, and through all the generosity of people that have done this, is that things could be far worse. And that as I talked to, I was on the executive board of the diocese for about 6 years, and as you talk to other got a chance to talk to a lot of other churches in our diocese. We have 158 churches in our diocese, by the way, if you didn't know. And we are in a lot better shape than a lot of other places. Now, you have very large churches like St. Luke's or St. David's or St. Martin's that have, very large endowments, and they can survive anything, but we're kind of like a little mid-size. And we are in far better shape than a lot of other people at this moment, which I'm grateful for. I pray for the other churches, but we are in far better shape, financially than a lot of places. And so we have our challenges before us. We had to make some hard decisions. I'm certainly, I was remembering a story my dad told me that, my dad's a very passionate, heartfelt man, and he works for a bank, and they bought us another bank. This is many years ago, and he had to go in and they decided there was a lot of redundancy, and so they were going to go and lay people off. And the CEO of the bank at that time was not a very kind or heartfelt man, and so he had basically set up a room with 2 chairs in it. It was my dad's job to go in and fire these people, and had security waiting outside if people asked him out. And it just wasn't. My dad said that, he goes, I couldn't do that, and he changed out the way that everything was done and kind of made the room a little more comfortable, and sat beside them, hugged them while he was telling them what was going on, doing different things. And I really give Cameron a lot of credit for approaching this also. That one of the things that we're going to do, and that Cameron forgot to mention, is that, even though that they are leaving, here in the next week or two, we are going to take very good care of them. That they're getting severance, going to be getting paid through the rest of the year because that's in our budget anyway. And we're just going to take care of them with that. And so they are leaving here where, number one, with a lot of prayers behind them, but they're also not leaving where we've just told them, this is your last paycheck, goodbye. But we're giving them 3 months of severance pay, taking care of them. So that's all I have to say is that it's a tough time, and, I feel a lot of, sadness about the way things have happened, but I'm also very hopeful about that we are making right decisions about things so that we can kind of continue this path that we've on, and that, the ship is, ship is headed in the right direction. We don't have a whole lot of wind at the moment, but I'm very confident that the wind's going to pick up. So with that, I guess we can do some questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Richard.